Growing up as Saumensch, page 30. Yes, an illustrious career. I should hasten to admit, however, that there was a considerable hiatus between the first stolen book and the second. Another noteworthy point is that the first was stolen from snow and the second from fire, not to omit that others were also given to her. All told, she owned 14 books, but she saw her story as being made up predominantly of 10 of them. Of those 10, 6 were stolen. 1 showed up at the kitchen table, 2 were made for her by a hidden Jew, and 1 was delivered by a soft, yellow-dressed afternoon. When she came to write her story, she would wonder exactly when the books and the words started to mean not just something, but everything. Was it when she first set eyes on the room with shelves and shelves of them? Or when Max Vandenberg arrived on Himmel Street carrying handfuls of suffering and Hitler's Mein Kampf? Remember, Mein Kampf means my struggle. Was it reading in the shelters, the last parade to Daku? Was it the word shaker? Perhaps there would never be a precise answer as to when and where it occurred. In any case, that's getting ahead of myself. Before we make it to any of that, we first need to tour Liesel Memminger's beginnings on Himmel Street and the art of Saumensching. Upon her arrival, you could still see the bite marks of snow on her hands and the frosty blood on her fingers. Everything about her was undernourished. Wire-like shins, coat-hanger arms. She did not produce it easily, but when it came, she had a starving smile. Her hair was a close enough brand of German blonde, but she had dangerous eyes, dark brown. You didn't really want brown eyes in Germany around that time, because remember, brown eyes often meant Jewish. Not that that was always the reality, but perhaps she received them from her father, but she had no way of knowing, as she couldn't remember him. There was really only one thing she knew about her father. It was a label she did not understand. Now remember, she doesn't understand these words because she can't read. She's illiterate. A strange word, communist. She'd heard it several times in the past few years, communist. There are boarding houses crammed with people, rooms filled with questions, and that word, that strange word, was always there somewhere, standing in the corner, watching from the dark. It wore suits and uniforms. No matter where they went, there it was each time her father was mentioned. She could smell it and taste it. She just couldn't spell or understand it. When she asked her mother what it meant, she was told that it wasn't important, that she shouldn't worry about such things. At one boarding house, there was a healthier woman who tried to teach the children to write using charcoal on the wall. Liesel was tempted to ask her the meaning, but it never eventuated. One day that woman was taken away for questioning. She didn't come back. When Liesel arrived in Moking, she had at least some inkling that she was being saved, but that was not a comfort. If her mother loved her, why leave her on someone else's doorstep? Why? 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 The fact that she knew the answer, if only at the most basic level, seemed beside the point. Her mother was constantly sick, and there was never any money to fix her. Liesel knew that, but that didn't mean she had to accept it. No matter how many times she was told that she was loved, there was no recognition that the proof was in the abandonment. Nothing changed the fact that she was lost, skinny child in another foreign place, with more foreign people, alone. The Humans lived in one of the small box-like houses on Himmel Street, a few rooms, a kitchen, and a shared outhouse with neighbors. The roof was flat, and there was a shallow basement for storage. It was supposedly not a basement of adequate depth. In 1939, this wasn't a problem. Later in 42 and 43, it was. When air raids started, they always needed to rush down the street to a better shelter. In the beginning, it was the profanity that made an immediate impact. It was so vehement and prolific. Every second word was either Saumensch, Sacral, or Arschloch. For people who aren't familiar with these words, I should explain. Sau, of course, refers to pigs. In this case of Saumensch, it serves to castigate, berate, or plain humiliate a female. Sacral, pronounced sacral, is for a male. Arschloch can be translated directly into asshole. That word, however, does not differentiate between the sexes. It simply is. Saumensch, Liesel's foster mother shouted that first evening when she refused to take a bath. "You filthy pig, why won't you get undressed?" She was good at being furious. In fact, you could say that Rosa Huberman had a face decorated with constant fury. That was how the creases were made in the cardboard texture of her complexion. Liesel, naturally, was bathed in anxiety. There was no way she was getting in that bath, or into bed for that matter. She was twisted into one corner of the closet-like washroom, clutching for the non-existent arms of the wall for some level of support. There was nothing but dry paint, difficult breath, and the deluge of abuse from Rosa. "Leave her alone," Hans Huberman entered the fray. His gentle voice made its way in, as if slipping through a crowd. "Leave her to me." He moved closer and sat on the floor against the wall. The tiles were cold and unkind. "You know how to roll a cigarette?" he asked her, and for the next hour or so they sat in the rising pool of darkness, playing with the tobacco and the cigarette papers, and Hans Huberman smoking them. When the hour was up, Liesel could roll a cigarette moderately well. She still didn't have a bath. Some facts about Hans Huberman. He loved to smoke. The main thing he enjoyed about smoking was the rolling. He was a painter by trade and played the piano accordion. This came in handy, especially in winter, when he could make a little money playing in the pubs of Molking, like the Knoller. He had already cheated me in one world war, but would later be put into another, as a perverse kind of reward, where he would somehow manage to avoid me again. So he was in World War I, and it's saying that he'll be in World War II again also. To most people, Hans Huberman was barely visible, an unspecial person. Certainly his painting skills were excellent. His musical ability was better than average. Somehow, though, and I'm sure you've met people like this, he was able to appear as merely part of a background, even if he was standing at the front of the line. He was always just there, not noticeable, not important, or particularly valuable. The frustration of that appearance, as you can imagine, was its complete misleadance, let's say. There most definitely was value in him, it did not go unnoticed by Liesel Memminger. The human child, so much cannier at times than the stupefyingly ponderous adult. She saw it immediately. His manner, the quiet air around him. When he turned the light on in the small, callous washroom that night, Liesel observed the strangeness of her foster father's eyes. They were made of kindness and silver, like soft silver melting. Liesel, upon seeing those eyes, understood that Hans Huberman was worth a lot. Some facts about Rosa Huberman. She was 5 feet, 1 inch tall, and wore her browny-gray strands of elastic hair in a bun. To supplement the Huberman income, she did the washing and ironing for 5 of the wealthier households in Molking. Her cooking was atrocious. She possessed the unique ability to aggravate almost anyone she ever met. But she did love Liesel Memminger. Her way of showing it just happened to be strange. It involved bashing her with wooden spoon and words at various intervals. When Liesel finally had a bath after 2 weeks of living on Himmel Street, Rosie gave her an enormous, injury-inducing hug. Nearly choking her, she said, "Saumensch, it's about time." After a few months, they were no longer Mr. and Mrs. Huberman. With a typical fistful of words, Rosa said, "Now listen, Liesel. From now on, you call me Mama." She thought a moment. "What did you call your real mother?" Liesel answered quietly, "Mama also?" "Well, I'm Mama number 2 then." She looked over at her husband, and him over there. She seemed to collect the words in her hand, pat them together, and hurl them across the table. "That sockerel, that filthy pig, you call him Papa, understand?" "Yes," Liesel promptly agreed. Quick answers were appreciated in this household. "Yes, Mama," Mama corrected her. "Saumensch, call me Mama when you talk to me." At that moment, Hans Huberman had just completed rolling a cigarette, having licked the paper and joined it all up. He looked over at Liesel and winked. She would have no trouble calling him Papa.